welcome everyone. Happy New Year. This is a show and tell episode featuring the final 12-month trial results of my 2025 potting mix. The recipe was featured in the first episode of last year. I will include a link to that video in the description box. The main enhancement of that recipe was the balanced slow release fertilizer and a few other ingredients. I received a lot of feedback and helpful comments on that recipe, and I appreciate it very much. First off, some of you asked why I decided to try the slow release fertilizer. This is a topic of its own merit, but to make it brief, the main reason was that looking back on the results, I had grown violets with a quick release, immediate action fertilizers in the past. I recognized that I was not able to grow the quality of mature plants like the one I had after I started adding it to my potting mix. You can compare the plants in my pre-2025 videos to the ones filmed in 2025 to tell the difference. One of them you see in front of you, it's Anne by Betty Bryant. It's a vintage longifolia variety, and the best way I could grow it you see in front of you, and this one has the slow release fertilizer in the potting mix. So now for those new to this channel, a little disclaimer about me and the sources of information I use for my videos. Just like many of you, I'm a great fan of African violets. I'm not an expert and I'm not professionally trained in chemistry, botany, or agriculture. I do have advanced degrees in other fields, but they're not related to African violets. Over the years, I've been experimenting with the growing conditions I can provide the best for my plants to thrive, and have experienced both successes and failures, like many other growers. The purpose of this channel is to share my African violet journey with fellow enthusiasts. At this point, I consider myself an intermediate grower. The information in my videos is based on my own growing experience, the feedback I receive from expert growers, and personal research. Now back to the potting mix. 6 months into the trial, mid-2025, I featured the intermediate trial results, the pros and cons of the new mix, as well as the adjustments I had made in the potting mix and the fertilizing schedule to address the adverse reactions to the slow release fertilizer, specifically in wick-watered plants, because as you know, currently I wick water all of my African violets due to the size of my collection and the interest of time. I will include a link to that video down below as well. In summary, some plants started showing signs of overfertilization, manifesting in excessive blooming and suckering, and some developed fertilizer burn, while others, like Anne you see in front of you, showed no signs of overfertilization. Since then, I continued observing mixed results with the adjusted recipe, whereby some violets developed better than others, and some continued displaying adverse overfertilization symptoms. In this group of plants, the symptoms that can be observed are fertilizer burn on older leaves. This is a vintage variety Feather by Irene Fredette, one of my favorites, and it's been developing well, but except the fertilizer burn on the tips of the older foliage. Buckeye Nostalgia is developing without any symptoms. Young Caprice is growing very well with the slow release granules in the potting mix. This is a no ID violet that does have some fertilizer burn on older leaves. Lion Sassy Sadie, growing very well. This is a young plant blooming for the first time. This is a Ukrainian hybrid by Olena Lebedska, L.E. Brizingida. It's growing rather compact, so we shall see. I can't tell yet how well it can grow. And Buckeye My Oh My, this is a large hybrid by Pat Hancock. This is the first adult mature blooming cycle, I should say. So it's growing well. There are no adverse symptoms that I observe. And here are a few plants that do exhibit some overfertilization symptoms. We'll start with Case Fiesta Lady. This is a starter plant with excessive blooming, and this is another one that doesn't bloom as much, but it has quite a few suckers forming up around the main crown, which can be a symptom of a culture break. So this needs to be repotted, and once repotted, though, it continues to grow really nicely. This is another starter, a sibling of these two plants that I did have time to repot earlier, and it started growing healthy leaves in the center. So hopefully once repotted, these two starters will bounce back to healthy growth. We shall see how it goes. And then here is a plant, Cajun's Hot Expectations, which is a very prolific bloomer. And here we see some noticeable fertilizer burn on the tips of the leaves. However, this could be also attributed to the fact that it hasn't been repotted for, I would say, maybe 7 to 8 months. Let's see. Yeah, it was planted in the spot in May of last year, so we're talking 7-8 months now. And I usually repot the plants every 6 months, or at least try to repot. So that could be a reason why. And also because I am really behind on flushing them with water to clear the salt built up in the soil. So this could be also the reason. So if I adjusted the flushing schedule, this could probably work better than what you see on this plant. All growing conditions equal. Here we can see the temperature and the humidity range right now in this room, and we're in the middle of winter, with slight variations in the light settings across my stands. And considering the risks of over-fertilizing with a slow-release fertilizer in wick watering systems in particular, I have attributed the mixed results to the lack of consistent distribution of the fertilizer granules in the soil, whereby even when mixed in thoroughly, some plants could wind up with more granules in the pot, risking eventual salt buildup, soil toxicity, and culture break, while the others with less granules in the pot continued to grow healthy. Given the mixed results, I made additional adjustments to the recipe and tweaked the liquid fertilizing schedule accordingly. I since learned that some consider combining slow-release fertilizers with liquid fertilizers a recipe for disaster due to the risk of over-fertilizing. With the micronutrient-free slow-release product that I chose, however, I had no other source of micronutrients than supplementing it with the liquid fertilizer that contained them. The first adjustment that I made was with slow-release fertilizer granules. I decreased them by half, so instead of 1/2 cupful per 1 gallon of potting mix, I'm using the same amount per 2 gallons of potting mix. For 2 gallons of potting mix, I use 4 quarts of Promix HP and 4 quarts of coarse perlite. Also decreased in half are other 3 ingredients: the mycorrhizae, the dried molasses, and azomite. I'm using the same amounts as I used for 1 gallon in the previous recipe, and now I'm using them for 2 gallons of potting mix. The next component, Bonite Systemic Houseplant Insect Control, with the main ingredient imidacloprid turned out to be the most controversial. It is approved for indoor use by the United States Environmental Protection Agency, but its use is heavily regulated, so there are certain restrictions, and of course you need to follow the application instructions on the label. So here I received some criticism regarding my application method, the one where granules are mixed directly with the soil rather than placed on or worked into the soil surface top layer in each pot. Mixing it into the soil when preparing a new batch was the only method familiar to me that allowed to apply correct ratio of bonite granules per gallon of potting mix according to the product label instructions. And it is stated here on the reverse label that per 1 gallon you gotta use 2.5 tablespoons. Because plants grow in my living space and not in a nursery outdoors, I was hesitant to expose myself to the excessive amount of product by placing it arbitrarily onto the soil surface. Most of the feedback was constructive, for which I'm very grateful, and some was accusatory, claiming that I was lying, destroying the planet and the bees. So I decided to make the bonite ingredient optional in this recipe and direct the audience to the product label for application instructions instead. The link to the product information will be included in the description box. As stated in my previous videos, I use this product as a preventative to protect my plants from insect infestations. And because I survived a heavy thrips infestation a couple of years back, this product has proven very helpful, unlike any other products that I had previously used, in helping eliminate the thrips infestation from my collection. And finally, for the micronutrient boost, because I decreased the slow-release fertilizer amount, I increased the additional liquid fertilizer schedule from once a month to twice a month or every other weekly refill of Orchid Pro liquid plant food at 7:8:6 NPK ratio. So basically, the final version of this recipe contains less slow-release fertilizer granules in the soil in favor of more liquid fertilizer with micronutrients in water refills. I will keep observing my plants for signs of overfertilization with the new schedule and with the new mix, and will later, as I mentioned earlier, try another Osmocote variety, the one containing micronutrients, so I can stop using the liquid fertilizer and combining two different fertilizer forms. And here is the adjusted potting mix recipe and fertilizing schedule I currently use with my plants. I plan on keeping experimenting with the slow release fertilizer in my potting mix, as so far it has proven to be the only way for me to grow plants to maturity without losing them to culture breaks. And if I had to guess, that was happening due to the pH imbalance in the potting mix and in the local city water. I will need to do more research on that. But in the meantime, this has been the best method for me so far. If I can find a way to grow them well without the slow release fertilizer, time will tell. I will keep you posted. Have you tried using slow release fertilizers to grow African violets? Please do share your experience in the comments. I really appreciate it. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe to support this channel. Happy growing!